Yasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One more time together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Radha Madhava ki jai. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday, start of a new year. New week, not new year. Okay, so today we're continuing our study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading two verses today. Does anyone remember the name of this chapter? Yes, scheduled incarnations. It's very blissful because every verse is about a unique personality of incarnation of Krishna. So we're going to do text 14 and 15. Text 14. The personality of God. Actually, let's read it together. It's a really nice verse. Personality of Godhead assumed the incarnation in Sringare in order to vanquish the great fears of the demigods. Challenged the Lord with a club in his hand by placing the demon on his thighs and piercing him with his nails, rolling his eyebrows in anger and showing his fearful teeth and mouth. Jai Lord Sringare. Okay, next verse, a different pastime. And we can read this one together as well. The leader of the elephants, whose leg was attacked in a river by a crocodile of superior strength, was much aggrieved. Taking a lotus flower in his trunk, he addressed the Lord, saying, O original enjoyer, Lord of the universe, O deliverer, as famous as a place of pilgrimage, all are purified simply by hearing your holy name, which is worthy to be chanted. So we'll do the Sanskrit for this one. Antasarasyurubalena pade grihito. Grahena yutta patir ambuja hasta arta. Ambuja hasta means with a lotus flower in the hand, an offering of a lotus flower. So he was in his trunk, right? This elephant was offering a lotus flower. Ahedam adi purusha khila lokanata. Tirtha Shravana Mangala Namadheya. Okay, please chant. Okay, let's do the word for word together and let's see if by the end we can remember one of them, okay? Because sometimes, like, I find myself just glazing out with the word for word, so see if you can pick one and retain it by the end, okay? Anta Sarasi, within the river. Uru Balena, by superior strength. Pade, leg. Grihita, being taken up. Grahina, by the crocodile. Yuta Pati, of the leader of the elephants. Ambuja Hasta, with a lotus flower in the hand. Artha, greatly aggrieved. Aha, addressed. Idam, like this. Adi Purusha, the original enjoyer. Akhila Lokanatha, the Lord of the universe. Tirtha Shrava, as famous as a place of pilgrimage. Shravana Mangala, all good simply by hearing the name. Namadeya, whose holy name is worth chanting. Okay, go down to the translation. Okay, who remembers one? Anyone? Okay, nice. Lotus in the hand, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Nice. Uh-huh. Yes. Uh-huh. Great. Great. You have a book there, right? still, we applaud you. And nice, yes. Shravanamangala means? Yeah, yeah, Shravanamangala. So hearing is Shravana, Mangala is auspicious. So Mangala, auspicious to hear, right? Auspicious hearing. Yes, anyone else? So great job, yeah. Let's do the translation together. And this is about Gajendra, the elephant, right? The name Gajendra is not mentioned here, but this is Gajendra. So the leader of the elephants, say it together, whose leg was attacked in a river by a crocodile of superior strength, was much aggrieved. Taking a lotus flower in his trunk, he addressed the Lord, saying, O original enjoyer, Lord of the universe, O deliverer, as famous as a place of pilgrimage, all are purified simply by hearing your holy name, which is worthy to be chanted. So what we're going to do is, it was a long purport, so I'll read the first paragraph and the third paragraph, and possibly, yeah, so we'll do that for now, the first and third paragraph. Okay? First paragraph. The history of delivering the leader of the elephants, whose leg was attacked in the river by the superior strength of a crocodile, is described in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Since the Lord is absolute knowledge, there is no difference between his holy name and the personality of Godhead. The leader of the elephants was much distressed when he was attacked by the crocodile. Although the elephant is always stronger than the crocodile, the latter is stronger than the elephant when it is in the water. And because the elephant was a great devotee of the Lord in his previous birth, he was able to chant the holy name of the Lord by dint of his past good deeds. Every living entity is always distressed in this material world because this place is such that at every step, one has to meet with some kind of distress. Does that sound relatable? Yeah. But one who is supported by his past good deeds engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:16. Those who are supported by impious acts cannot be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, even though they are distressed. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:15. Personality of Godhead Hari appeared at once on the back of his eternal bearer Garuda and delivered the elephant. All right, and then scroll down to it starts with the elephant addressed. Okay? The elephant addressed the Lord as Akhila Lokanatha, or the Lord of the universe, who is therefore the Lord of the elephant also. The elephant, being a pure devotee of the Lord, specifically deserved to be saved from the attack of the crocodile, and because it's a promise of the Lord that his devotee will never be vanquished, it was quite befitting that the elephant called upon the Lord to protect him. And the merciful Lord also at once responded. The Lord is the protector of everyone, but he is the first protector of one who acknowledges the superiority of the Lord, instead of being so falsely proud as to deny the superiority of the Lord, or to claim to be equal to him. He is ever superior. A pure devotee of the Lord knows this difference between the Lord and himself. Therefore, a pure devotee is given first preference because of his full dependence, whereas the person who denies the existence of the Lord and declares himself the Lord is called Asura, and as such, he is given protection by the strength of limited power, subject to the sanction of the Lord. Since the Lord is superior to everyone, his perfection is also superior. No one can imagine it. So we'll stop there for now. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitamnina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I want to touch on a few points from these two paragraphs. In the first one, there is a statement that everyone, I'll just read it again because it's so applicable to us. Every living entity is always distressed in this material world because this place is such that at every step one has to meet with some kind of distress. So today's theme, what I'm going to be covering is we're going to look at distress in life, the purpose of it, and how to navigate fears that come up. So in both of these verses, we have an incarnation of the Lord stepping in to rescue a devotee, right? The first verse was about Lord Nrsingadev rescuing Prahlad. And in that case, we have a very exalted devotee. Prahlad Maharaj is a very advanced devotee. And he wasn't actually fearing. He wasn't full of fear, like, help me, Krishna, right? He wasn't in that mood. He was just remembering Krishna, but in a calm, he was actually kind of even in his temperament as he was going through all the distresses of his father. And so we see that as one advances, they become more and more fearless. And what is the name for Srila Prabhupada that is also indicates that? What's the full name? Yeah. Abhaya Charanaravinda. So Abhaya means without fear. Right? Is the without. So Bhaya is fear. Abhaya is without fear. Charanaravinda, at the feet of the Lord, without fear, fearless at the feet of the Lord. So the closer we feel to the Lord in our day-to-day experience, the less our fear will be consuming us. Now, in the next verse, we have the pastime of Gajendra, and he was afraid. He was calling out, like, I'm not going to win this fight with this crocodile. They were in the water where he's less powerful. And the crocodiles used to be in the water, so he had that advantage. And so he was afraid, calling out in distress. And that's also wonderful. He was at his level. He was feeling the fear and calling for help. Right? And so that's very relatable to us. Before we reach that completely exalted state of being fearless, we're going to be feeling fear. It's going to come up in our life, just as we feel anger, just as we feel, what else? Grief, just the regular human emotions that come up into the body and the mind, right? That's just kind of a common experience, being in this conditioned experience. So we can relate a lot to this Gajendra, right? Calling out, help. And so when you think about, he was in the water and he had his footing wasn't as strong. If you think of an elephant on land, they're really solid and they're really powerful. So they can fight off a lot of any creature on land. But in the water, he had a disadvantage. So in our life, sometimes we're in the water, sometimes we're on land, right? So let's say the land, if we're thinking about humans, we tend to be stronger on land. So we'll use the metaphor of when we're on land, we're stronger. When we're in water, we're weaker. So what would that look like for you in your life if you are feeling really solid on land? What does that feel like when you're moving through life? What are those supportive elements that create that land for you, that solid foundation of your life, so that you're not overcome by this the fearing nature of this world? Kirtan. Okay, yes. Kirtan. Sangha. Yes, so association of others who are also spiritually minded. Yeah. Yeah, devotee friends. Yeah. That's so supportive, right? To have that. Oh, I like that. Yes. So looking backward and realizing, wow, I've overcome all these things. So then that can boost me today. Yeah, good one. Mentors. Yeah, that's an important part of our spiritual package, you could say, right? The foundation. If we're thinking about what our foundation is in spiritual life, what keeps me strong? So we have devotee friends, sangha, kirtan, or chanting the holy names, mentorship, our own history of things, prashadam. Yeah, that can boost us, right? It can literally physically strengthen us as well as spiritually. Our body can become stronger. Sadhana, yes. And sadhana is very strengthening. Why is that? Why is sadhana strengthening? Anybody can answer? Helps us to connect with the Lord. Yeah. What else? Eating the bird inside of the cage. Yeah. It's our constitutional position. So we're strengthening because we're becoming more of who we really are. Right? It's like, okay, I'm getting more stable in myself. Just as you get strength when you first wake up from a nap, you might be like, whoa, where am I? What this grog? Have you ever had that? I just came back from North Carolina a few days ago, and I woke up in my bed and I was like, I actually thought I was in the other room, and the other it was very, really weird. And the wall is on the opposite side. So I was like, anyway, it was just very disorienting, right? So there takes a few minutes to kind of get strength again, like, oh yes, I'm in this life, I'm not groggy anymore, I'm like this particular situation. So similarly, on a spiritual level, we start to realize more and more who we really are, and then it's like waking up from that dream, like coming back to our constitutional position. There's something else about sadhana that's strengthening. What is it? Grounded and focused. Yeah, so channeling the mind to that focal point of Krishna, right? So not wavering all over the place. What is it about the nature? What is sadhana? What does sadhana mean? What is the nature of it? Discipline practice, yeah. Which means what? Consistency, right? Consistency daily. What was that word? Regulated, right? So consistent. And anybody, even on a material level, anyone who wants to accomplish something, there's these books written for people who want to reach their goal, self-help books. There's always going to be mention of steady, incremental practice. Like if I have a jar and every day I put one pebble in, soon the jar will be filled. It's just going to naturally happen. So the small steps reaches my goal. And whereas some people's brains might think, well, I want to reach that goal, but all the small steps are really annoying. So I'm just going to kind of hope that one day I reach that goal, right? That it's a way of, it's actually different brains, different people, different brains have different ways of looking at it. But if we can overcome the tedious, for some people, it's very tedious to do the day to day, like, okay, every day, gotta, right? But if they can overcome that and start to doing the consistency, they'll quickly see that, oh, I'm actually going up, like I'm actually moving upward. Whereas if I just dream for the goal, but I never do the steps, then I may not get to the goal, right? So yeah, so these things are all strengthening. So that puts us on land. What are the things that put us on in the metaphorical water of our life, where we're not stable anymore, we're feeling unsettled? Poor sleep, yeah, that's huge. Impacts everything. Isolation, yeah. Being isolated from others, right? Yeah. And how would you like to add a sentence to that, or something, like a commentary on that? How that's like the water? Do you have a microphone? I can pass the microphone.
I was reading about like bad habits and addiction. So what's really like fosters that bad habit or addiction to something bad is when you're in isolation, where you don't share what you're going through. You're just you feel like you're the worst, and you just keep feeding that to yourself. But when you you share what you're going through with others, when you have good friends and you can ask for guidance from mentors, that keeps you strong. So the lack of that makes you weak.
Yeah, so you're talking about something even more subtle than just physically being around people. You're talking about being able to share of oneself fully with others, with at least a select trusted people in our life, right? So that sense of isolation can happen even when we're surrounded by people. Has anyone had that experience? You're surrounded, you're in a group setting, and you just feel very isolated. Or you're with some other people that are laughing and you're just like, I don't relate. And there's a sense of isolation in the context of people. So isolation doesn't necessarily mean just being alone in a room chanting. It means feeling that loneliness of not having people that I can be myself with in spiritual life. So that can create that shakiness, and like you said, the mind can take over and think, well, I don't really relate. I don't know. I don't fit in here, but I don't have anyone to talk to about these doubts. And so therefore it just spirals down very often early in the early days of ISKCON, especially, and or in places where someone doesn't feel like they can be themselves. That can happen where someone gets discouraged and leaves because they don't have someone to talk to while that's happening inside. Like, oh, I don't really relate with that. I don't know, right? And they're having all these internal doubts, but they are scared to say it because they're afraid of being judged or whatever is the anxiety. And so then they just they can leave. Yeah. So at least here in this context, in this Krishna house setting, that my experience of Krishna house from the very beginning was that very open to, there was, especially in the classes, there was a sense that when I came, I was like, wow, we can ask any question we want. There's no like, oh, don't ask that. That's embarrassing. That's, don't be, don't, you're going to look like you're struggling in such and such ways. So don't say it, right? That kind of thing. It was very open mood here at Krishna House, and I always appreciate that. So, and that's way back 2012. So I think that mood has continued. It's very, very nice. What else? Anything else for the water of our life that makes us shaky? Yes. Do you want to just quickly elaborate on that one?
Making excuses for why I can't be steady, or making excuses for why it's okay to drop off my sadhana, or making excuses that aren't actually, like real excuses. They're just like a sense of excusing myself because I want to, but not because it's an actual reason. Like being sick, actual reason, but like because I don't want to wake up, not an actual reason.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's very helpful to be self-reflective and look at our excuses and say, okay, am I just being a little bit, I feel like I want to use the word lazy, but it sounds so negative. But yeah, we can ask ourselves that. Like, am I just being kind of lackadaisical? That's another word. What's another word? Uninspired. Yeah. Am I just waffling here? So yeah, we can just be self-reflective and ask, like, is this a really legit reason and I need support here, or am I just kind of taking it easy and being a little easy? There's another word for that. Taking things for granted, kind of, sort of meandering. Right? Any other? Yes, Jonathan. Oh, sorry, Jonathan.
For me, one of the things that's been detrimental is like not having healthy mentorship and peer support, but specifically in places where it's supposed to be there, and you come feeling that that's what you're going to find and get, and it doesn't really match up with what you need or where you're at. But I've experienced that and felt very disappointed at times. Specifically with recovery groups, he was talking about addiction and coming in and feeling like I'm going to get a mentor and this is all about being part of this group, and you come in and they just don't even try to connect with you or uplift you in any way.
Right. Yeah, so that's really painful, and it can feel very disillusioning, right? To be in that experience where you're really longing for something and then it doesn't come. It's very discouraging and painful. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Yes.
I think this is like in generally putting faith on the inconstant, which is this material world, and Krishna is gonna at some point pull the rug. So I think Kishori Maharaj calls it life quakes. Like when you
life quake.
Yeah.
Like an earthquake, but a life quake.
Like when, for example, your whole construction of your world is like, I have a loving family. I have my mother who's always there, and then they pass away, for example. I mean, life quake. Like, I'm sorry. That touches nerve.
Well, it touches a nerve for everyone because we're all in that situation. It's very real. Like I think we can all relate to that. There is, even when you said that, like, yes, oof, that's the root of the fear in this material world, is that I'm getting so comfortable here and I'm getting so settled, and at any moment, these people that I'm getting so settled and at ease with, quote unquote, can just be taken away, like the rug being pulled up from under us. And so the death of a loved one is one of the most unsettling, shocking things that can happen. Because as much as we intellectualize it and think about it, it's on a very base level. It can just be very jarring for the body, for the mind, for the heart. So that's a good segue into this topic of distress, right? The distresses of this world, and that's the big one, losing the loved ones. So Gajendra here was in distress. He was thinking he's going to lose his life. That's another one, when we're at the brink of our own death, right? So either death of a loved one, or I'm in the water of this experience now because I feel like I'm going to die any moment. And maybe some of us in the room have been there, right? We're feeling like we're on the brink of our own life, which feels very scary. So what he did in that moment is he picked up a load. It's actually very sweet if you think about it. He's on that verge of thinking, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And he reaches down and picks up a lotus flower and offers it up to the Lord with his elephant hand, right? The hand of the elephant. And if you've ever been around, who here has been around an elephant? Not very many. Okay, some. So their trunk is very, very sensitive. They actually have a lot of nerve endings, and they can pick up a peanut. They're like very delicate with their hand. I mean, yeah, I call it a hand because it looks like a hand. It has a little. They have like a thumb to it, and so he lifted it up with this trunk as an offering, as a final, you could say, a final offering in that body. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it, Lord. And he starts to pray to the Lord, and he's offering glorification in that. So it's actually a beautiful testament that when a devotee is in such distress, there's still a part of the, even if the physical distress is there, there's a part of that soul that's coming out, like offering to Krishna or reaching out to Krishna or even glorifying Krishna. Gajendra didn't immediately say, help, I'm being attacked by a crocodile, right? It was like the words were glorification of the Lord. Oh, original enjoyer, Lord of the universe, oh, deliverer, as famous as a place of pilgrimage, right? He's glorifying him first. All are purified simply by hearing your holy name, which is worthy to be chanted. So quite incredible if you think about being in that fearful state where you're not sure if your life can continue, and then still finding words to glorify the Lord. So we may not be at that level either. And sometimes I do this thing. I think all of us at some point in our life may have done this, but there was something in the recent past where that was distressing me, and I was on a walk. I was just on a japa walk, and I just said out loud, not like super loudly, because I'm walking around here, but I just said, "Oh Krishna, oh Govinda, help, help, help!" Like, help me. It just kind of came out as like a prayer. So sometimes when we're in a more neophyte, or like we're not at the stage of, okay, first let me exalt the Lord. It's like, no, let me just right up say help, right? That's okay too. We can just call out, help, oh Govinda, I'm in distress, help me. And so we're in this world where there's distress at every corner. And it might sound pessimistic the way that devotees are always talking about it. Like, oh, this whole world's full of suffering, and any moment you're just going to suffer more. And it's just all. It was actually a girl, a roommate I had at Krishna House, who was a new devotee, and she brought that up. She said, "Oh, it sounds so negative. Everyone's always talking about temporary nature of this world, and it's all going to end." And so, yeah, it was a good point. It was interesting. We had an interesting discussion. But I was reflecting on that in this context. Is it pessimistic to say that distress is around the corner? It's a curious question. And I know there's bumper stickers in Gainesville from, I think it was Satchels maybe. I don't know, this bumper sticker from way back. What is it? If anything can go well, it will, right? It's to offset this idea that if anything can go wrong, it will, right? To kind of create some optimism. And you see those bumper stickers. Okay, so Gopal Prabhu just said, yeah, being a pessimist about material life and an optimist about spiritual life. Okay, so that's a nice, yeah, from Kalakanta Prabhu. Okay, yeah, so that's another approach to it. What else do you think about this? Are we pessimists when we're talking about distress? Realist approach. Okay. Do you want to add anything to that? You can use the microphone.
We are thinking more of realistic thing. I don't know actually how to elaborate, but I think we are in more realistic.
Yeah, so just a reality check. Like, okay, don't get too, like you're saying, we tend to get so comfortable that it's very jarring when someone that we love is on the end of their life. So reality checks are helpful. Like, okay, yes, the scripture really cuts, right? Sadhana, sadhu means one who cuts. And scripture also, personalities of the scripture, the speaker of the scripture, they cut through this illusion that everything here is just rosy. And they do it in such a way that we don't just all get depressed and down and like, oh, life's woe is us, and we're just gonna all, right? It's like it done in a way that can be optimistic and hopeful. Because in the darkness, there's also the wonderful hope. Like when we reach, there's that saying that if you've been at the very bottom, like if you're down low, you can't go any lower. So now the only way you can go is up, right? So there's sort of an optimism of like, okay, we've the reality check of this situation, and now what? And now we're gonna find our real exit. Yes.
I always
Oh.
thought,
Okay. Yeah. And then behind you. Okay. Go ahead.
I always thought like the world is suffering is just a final statement.
A final statement.
Like it is suffering. Well, it is a lot of things. It has suffering. I always found to be a better translation. Like, yes, you're gonna joyous things will come to an end and you will suffer, but it's not just is suffering. That's acknowledging one very large aspect, but not the totality of what life is.
Yeah, that's a great point. So just in the wording itself, so that on this planet there are situations of suffering. There are also situations of joy and elation, and actually the Earth planet specifically is described as both hell and heaven in one, because there are any number of situations we can be in that are either one or the other. Right? And then within the day itself, there are times that are like, oh, hellish, and then heavenly, and like, it's like that. So that's a good, creating some nuance in that is helpful. Yes, Brandon.
I was just gonna say, I've learned in my life that where attention goes, energy flows, and so it's good to be aware of certain things. But if you're always focused on that, then them kind of things will start to preoccupy your mind, and then all of a sudden you start attracting that stuff into your life, And so, I think it's good to be aware that this material life there is, but it's not really suffering. There's pain. Suffering is optional. That's all internal. That's in our own mind. Pain is the only thing we can't avoid, but it's how we perceive that with our mind that ends up turning into suffering. And so really like life can be heaven on earth, which is where a lot of us, we experience that being here. Whereas a lot of people go throughout their day, and somebody cuts them off in traffic and then they're in a bad state of mind or whatever. And so that's my personal view of it.
Yeah, great point. Some of you might know Winnie the Pooh, the children's stories. There's a character in there, Eeyore, the donkey. I think it's a donkey, right? Eeyore the donkey. He's always moping around like da da da, right? It's like everything is just like gloomy and like sad, and he even talks that way. It's just like, so if we're in that space, we're going to keep being around that energy because we're creating that energy, right? And so that's a really good point, that what we focus on is what grows for us. And so making sure that we're not just focusing on all the negative, on all the like, because that's what we constantly see. Where we focus is what we see usually. So if I'm focused on, yes, I'm in, there's hard times, there's good times, and I'm really wanting to focus on my journey as a spirit soul, then I start to notice that everywhere. I start to see other spirit souls. I start to see the rays of light coming through the darkness, that kind of thing. So thank you. That's a great point. Yes.
I believe that people who think that speaking about this death or suffering is depressing is because their understanding of this world is that it is all there is. There is no spiritual world. It's this body is all I have. This time is all I have. Of course, it's depressing. I mean, you think it's all going to just end, because it's unnatural for us to just even think about ending, because spirit is always eternal. And another example you can think of suffering is just little exams we have in life. And then you have a final exam. So a student who is being criticized about being concerned about final exam by others who are like, don't talk about it. I know it's there, but stop talking about its exam. But a student actually is intelligent, and Prabhupada said intelligence means always keep death on our side. So we always know it's there. That's what it's.
Oh, that's a great example. We've all been in that situation where we're trying to, well, I don't know if we've all been in, but I can relate to that, where I was trying to study for something, and then the other kids, it's almost like peer pressure not to do it. Like, oh, what, you're too goody-goody or something like that. Like, why are you studying for that? So there is that pressure in this material world to just don't think about these important topics, just enjoy, just get, and oftentimes there's a deeper anxiety that people are not even aware of. And so they fill it with what? Addictions, right? Or something that'll help fill that void. Like, uh-oh, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to feel it either. And so I'm going to like eat it away or drink it away or take drugs to create a different world for myself, or video games endlessly, or any kind of addictive behavior, right? Like scrolling endlessly, just something to zone out and not think about this pressing issue, which is that we are all going to, this life is going to come to an end. And I don't want to think about that. I want to get comfy and just enjoy. And if other people remind me of it, I get kind of annoyed, right? So we're working against a lot of peer pressure here in this material world by being somebody who does think about it. And yet devotees are so optimistic and joyful, right? They're not just all Eeyores walking around. They're like, when you see, oftentimes new people will say that I ran into the Hare Krishnas and they were just so happy. It's almost like, why are they, it's like uncanny, right? Like, why are they so happy? It's kind of jarring. They almost, sometimes they wonder, like, are they either are they on something, or are they like just kind of sentimental, or like naive, right? It's sort of like, oh, why are they so kind of, yeah, naively happy? But because there's that foundation that we've created that we talked about earlier, where when we're in that space with others and we're like really working on our spiritual journey, shastra, sadhana, sangha, all those things, we do start to feel that freedom from that deep fear that this whole world is running away from, really. We've faced it, we sit with it, and we acknowledge it, and then we find our solution to it. There's a book title, it was a book actually I read when I was in my 20s, called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it's just a nice title, right? It's like, feel the fear and do it anyway. So we've sometimes very often the most effective way to deal with an emotion is to not run from it, but to feel it and to be with it, and then to find others to help us through it, find other techniques to help us through it, and so on. But if I keep avoiding and running, then there's no helping, right? So feel the fear, do it anyway. So for the devotee, doing it anyway would mean what? What would that mean? Feel the fear and do it anyway. If you think about Gajendra, he was feeling the fear, and what was he doing anyway? Right? Offering up the lotus flower, taking shelter. And so that doing it anyway is this taking shelter. I'm going to let go of thinking I'm going to fix this all, and I'm going to just put up my little hand, my trunk, and just call out to the Lord, and yeah, do it anyway, even if I don't feel like it. I'm going to somehow find a way to seek shelter. And maybe when we're not at that space of feeling, if we're feeling frustrated with Krishna, like, why is Krishna, sometimes we can do that. Why is Krishna doing this to me? My life is so hard. It shouldn't be this way, right? I think we've all had moments of that. Like, why am I having to do this? Why am I having to go through this hardship? In those times, we can find a devotee who we can do it with, someone that we trust spiritually. If it's not directly Krishna, we find a devotee of Krishna, and we take shelter of that devotee for guidance, devotee friend or a devotee mentor. Right? So there's always someone we can do it with. And then one other thing I want to mention is that in recent decades, there's been this school of thought on mindfulness. It's actually not recent, but just the term mindfulness is more recent. But it comes from way back, like with the meditation, practices of meditation. And specifically in the Buddhist school, right? They really emphasize mindfulness, being in the moment, being fully present with what is internally and externally. If I'm with you, I'm with you. I'm not like, right? If I'm with this meditated, it's like that, really being present. And so we as devotees also want to practice that consciousness. We call it consciousness, really, right? Krishna consciousness, being conscious of someone fully, means that my mind isn't wandering everywhere. It does mean mindfulness. And so there was a doctor and a researcher scientist named John Kabat-Zinn. And so he did a lot of study on and a lot of research studies on mindfulness. And he found that, and this is probably not new news to you, you all heard about these things, but it's very interesting to connect it. So he found that people who are in chronic pain, when they would do mindfulness, which means just different techniques of just being fully present, like washing the dishes without the mind racing, just washing the dishes, right? Things like that, really mindful living, that their chronic pain was dramatically reduced. The pain intensity level was dramatically reduced, even in comparison to pharmaceuticals. And so just on a mundane level, being a conscious being, being fully present helps with material things. So what to speak of on a spiritual level, the more mindful and the more conscious we can be, which our whole philosophy is about, right? Krishna consciousness, the more we can feel that, like being present with Krishna and with those who love Krishna, and all this aspects of Krishna, the philosophy, the sadhana, even the prasadam experiences, being really mindful and really appreciating it. The more I do that, the more I'm in direct contact and awareness with Krishna. Then what happens? The fear barometer, it's like the fear barometer, I guess you could say, goes down, or the scale. So the more that I'm building my conscious connection with Krishna, the more that you'll notice the anxieties and worries of this world will be going down. And I've experienced that firsthand in my life, and I'm sure some of you have too. The times when I was the most anxious and afraid were the times I was the most bodily conscious and thinking that I had to create my life the way that I want to make it. Like I'm the controller and I have to now, it seems like Krishna's not really doing anything about it, so I'm going to take it up, right? I'm going to do it. And the more I got in that mood, the more my anxiety levels were shooting up. And so when you're looking back on your life, or even now, you can ask yourself, okay, I'm feeling some anxiety, I'm feeling some fear. Let's check and see what's happening on this side. Am I really am I building that foundation that's going to strengthen me on the land? Or am I waddling, waffling? And the water, am I like, right? Am I kind of in that space of like, I'm the controller, I got to figure this out. And I'm just like, the material energy is just shaking me back and forth, right? So we can just be inquisitive and see, you might notice a pattern between the fear shooting up at the times when I'm also thinking like, I'm the controller and I have to do it all myself and I'm not seeking shelter. Now seeking shelter and see what happens on this side. Okay, so it's a very interesting thought reflection, something to think about or write about and just look about in your life when you look back on your life. So thank you so much. And I'd like to ask if there's a question or comment. Yeah, Radhika.
Thank you for the class. I was thinking, I had a question and a comment, so I'll make the comment first. When you talked about how you went on the Japa walk and you said, help, help, that was really sweet to hear because most of my childhood, at least growing up, I always felt like it's not appropriate to, ask for help going through material suffering. Like, it's better to just pray to Krishna or glorify him, but not necessarily say, oh, help, I'm going through this material suffering. But to treat Krishna as a friend sometimes is also very sweet and just open our heart to him. So it's very encouraging. I'm working on that.
I'll just quickly comment back on that and then you can say your question. So I was recently listening to the audio of Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. So the actual recorded audio between Brahmatirtha Prabhu and Prabhupada. And there was a section where he's talking about his, Brahmatirtha was bringing up this point about the diet and how sometimes he finds it hard to eat the prasadam of the devotees because it was hurting his stomach. It was like the spiciness of it. And Prabhupada made 2 points. First, he said, yeah, the cook should be sensitive. So he mentioned that. And then he said, the advanced devotees, like exalted devotees, they don't make any distinction between this prasadam, that prasadam, because they see it all equally as Krishna's mercy. And they just eat whatever. And he said, this is the important part, do not imitate that exalted devotee who has no distinguishing anymore. He said, as long as we're on the platform of distinguishing and making distinctions, we can practice, and I'm paraphrasing here, but practice it on that level. And so therefore, like picking the prasadam that doesn't hurt your stomach is okay because we're in that space, we're at that level. So similarly, as long as we're not, because I also grew up with that, like don't bring your things to Krishna because it's not pure. Only bring your pure prayers to Krishna, right? And so I've just accepted this is where I'm at, and I'm going to keep turning to Krishna. Because if I go, oh, I can only turn to Krishna when it's a pure prayer, then there's so much time in the day where I'm not in that pure prayer mode, and then I'm not turning to Krishna. So I started to realize, actually, any moment I'm in the grocery store, oh, I'm so annoyed, this is taking so long. Oh, Krishna, I would just, just talk to Krishna as our ever well-wisher and our supreme best friend in our heart. He's traveling with us. He already knows anyway, so we can just talk to him. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Purport was talking about how Gajendra was a devotee in his last life. I was wondering if you know anything about that, and that's why he remembered to call out to Krishna.
I would have to go back and just read the pastime again to give the accurate details on that. Yeah, it's in the eighth canto. Yes, the eighth canto in there. Yeah.
Past life, it was called Indradyumna.
Oh yeah.
It's King Indradyumna. He's our spiritual master. So I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I don't know the pastime either. What happened that made him turn into an elephant? I just know that
there's probably a curse in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think it was a curse.
Chances are there's a curse in there. Yeah, I'm a little rusty on that one. I would go back and check.
The last part of his talk, it brought up something I was talking with one of my family members with this weekend about how he had brought up he felt like men aren't really able to express themselves emotionally. And I was just kind of wondering what the difference was between like not being able to express them, but or like you had said, being able to feel them, but then continuing to move through. Like, how do you navigate emotions, basically?
In a nutshell, it's a huge topic. Okay, in a nutshell, what? Yeah, what comes to mind? What comes to mind immediately when you said that is Arjuna on the battlefield, and he was expressing his emotion to Krishna, his distress. Like, I can't do this. I'm shaking. I'm full of distress at having to kill my relatives. And so he's being honest and open with Krishna and taking support from Krishna. And then by the help and guidance and wisdom of Krishna, who is the supreme guru, right? Then he was able to pick up his bow and arrow and do it. And so that's a perfect example that when we're going through something, we might need to pause our activity for a while to address what's coming up. And doing it with a devotee, someone we trust, is actually really helpful, because not only, especially if we tell them what we're asking for, we don't want to say, can you just listen to me first before you jump down my throat with advice, right? We sometimes need to remind people, because people love, including myself, we love giving advice. It's so much easier to do it to others than to ourselves. So so just saying, like, first, I'd like to share something with you. Can you listen to what I'm going through? And then if we're open to it, we can say, can you give me some perspective on this, some spiritual guidance, which can be really helpful. So then taking that time to be able to, and it looks different for different people. Some people are more emotionally driven than others. Some people are more in their head and they're not as in touch with what's happening on an emotional level, or even in the body, like what's going on. But different strokes for different folks. So just remembering that we can always seek guidance from devotees, and finding people in our life that can be good listeners for us is also helpful, and being that for others. So if someone comes to us with problems, we can do that for them and listen and first hear them out. Maybe they're not wanting a solution at this moment. Maybe they're just wanting a good friend to hear what's happening for them on the inside. And then saying, would you like a perspective? And maybe they're not open to it. But yeah, just realizing how much in my life I would turn to people for help, but then just get advice back. And there was a part missing where I wanted to just be heard fully. And so just being aware in our experience to offer that to others. Let me be mindfully present with this person and really hear what they're going through and maybe reflect back so they really feel seen and heard. And then see, what do they need here? Sometimes what's most faith building is just to be seen and heard and not getting Shastra dumped at us, right? So it's very individual, and the mentors who are expert at that, they know, like, here's what this person needs now. And then gently we can say, would you like, let me know if you'd like some to read together, or would you like to do a kirtan together, something that would uplift our consciousness. I'm here for you too, for that. So just some thoughts in a nutshell on that topic. Oh yes, one last thing.
I wanted to add something to Jennifer Singh's question. It's from Dr. Gansan. She says that in our society, it's promoted that men is hard, not emotional beings. But he said the reality is that men just as emotional as women. He says sometimes maybe even more. But because we are told and programmed you should subdue those emotions, hide those emotions, many men suffer. And obviously we know that suicide rate is very high amongst men. So we shouldn't pretend like we're not emotional beings, the men. Another thing I wanted to add is when you're saying about helping others, and so we have a problem. It will give you perspective and help you. So if you're hungry, go feed somebody in spite of being hungry. Right. You will see how much it is.
To take us out of our own problems, we go find someone else to help. That's a really good point. And on the first point you made about, men also have they're also emotional beings. Every human has emotions. What I came across in my studies over the years is that very often, because men feel that they can't do the emotions of sadness or grief as much, right? They feel like that's maybe more taboo, the crying, all that, or maybe it's harder, whatever, for various reasons. Anger tends to be an outlet for men, right? So like that's also emotional, right? So anger. And usually under anger, there's something else. There's another need that needs to be met. So there's just also awareness. Like when I'm feeling angry, what's underneath? So Shri Ganesha ki jai. So we'll end here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Thank you all for the great comments and realizations.